benefited from the national curriculum brought in by a Conservative government. My school took up that challenge to push kids like me to achieve. I worked hard, of course I did. But I had the good luck to go to a great school, to have a family who cared deeply about education, a grandfather who read to me week in, week out. And like so many stories, this one has a moral lesson at its core. I am proof that the system can work, that a great education can be a transformational force, that background doesn't have to be destiny. That belief formed then is the core of my politics now. That the promise our children deserve, that hard work is what counts no matter your background. I believe in that promise, in making that dream real. But I saw so many of my friends from my area let down. Let down by a system that lacked a restless ambition for their futures, content too often to deliver a mediocre education, middling, in schools that drifted, an education that was seen as just fine for these kids, for kids like me. Michael Gove used to call this the soft bigotry of low expectations, and with good reason. He was right. But I don't need to be told about that. I grew up with it all around me. In my community, holding back my friends. I don't forget. Not now, not ever. It's these memories of those injustices, the doors closed, the dreams stifled, the futures denied. That's what drives me forward in this job. I get up every morning to right those wrongs, to break down the barriers to opportunity for each and every child. Background wasn't my destiny, and I won't rest until that is true for all children. That is my vision for education. Opportunity for those children, for all children. That is our mission, driven by the Prime Minister's plan for change. An excellent teacher for every child, a high quality curriculum for every school, a core offer of excellence for every parent. Raising a floor of high standards, below which schools must not slip, above which schools can and must innovate with no ceiling. Now, those memories are from a long time ago. And in the decades since, standards in England's schools have risen and millions of children have benefited. Our system now has many strengths to build into that core. The greater use of evidence in classrooms across the country. No more flying blind, guided only by tradition. Now, what matters is what works, a consensus beyond parties. Reformed exams, more rigour, more challenge, our national curriculum and national strength, one from which we will build, raising the floor, removing the ceiling. Take one example, one that matters immensely. Every child learns about the Holocaust, thanks to the national curriculum. That's the floor we need. But teachers can then innovate in how they teach it. Stories from newspaper archives of troops finding concentration camps, or hearing the testimonies of Holocaust survivors who have been immortalised using recordings and virtual reality technology. And now the Curriculum and Assessment Review will take us onward, delivering a core curriculum for all our children that is deep and rigorous, knowledge-rich down to its bones. And that matters so much. Knowledge is foundational, the building blocks of learning. It's no use developing skills if children lack the knowledge to back it up. And that curriculum must be taught by the very best teachers. As a profession as well as a calling, teaching has come on leaps and bounds far ahead of where I was at school. The use of phonics is just one example where this has delivered for millions of children. Over 100,000 more children every year are securing the phonic foundations of reading since 2012. And we will continue down this proud path for future generations. But now, right now, we need more teachers. That's why we are committed to recruiting an additional 6,500 new expert teachers over the course of this Parliament, ensuring we have more teachers where they are most needed across our colleges and our secondary schools, both mainstream and specialist. Because more teachers in our classrooms means more attention for our children, and that attention makes it easier to learn, drives better attainment, more teaching, better learning. But more alone is not enough. I want to drive up the quality of teaching too, building on the advances in teaching as a profession and in teacher training. That's why we are requiring all teachers to work towards qualified teacher status and doubling down on evidence-based training. We'll back our teachers with the very best AI, part of an exciting new wave of technology to modernise our education system. These changes are critical for all of our children, but nowhere are they more important than for our children with SEND. Now, it's hard to say about a system that today is failing so many that there has been progress. The recognition of additional needs, the debate around how we support children with SEND is a sign of progress, but there is much, much more to do. We must set high expectations for all, spread pockets of excellence right throughout the system, focus on need and not diagnosis, with children able to access the right support more often in mainstream so that they can learn and thrive. Empower schools to intervene earlier, equipping them not just to support, but to excel for children with a range of different needs. Advances in the use of evidence, in the curriculum, in teaching, will take that forward, delivering anew for generations of children. But perhaps the key driver of rising standards across our schools has been strong multi-academy trusts. Take an example. Tanfield is a school that sits on the edge of Stanley, just 10 miles west of where I grew up. Over the decades, tens of thousands of kids with backgrounds just like mine have walked through those school gates. And for a long time, the school meandered along, performing poorly, requiring improvement that never quite appeared, delivering outcomes never quite what they could be. A reality that year after year, kids were being denied the opportunity to achieve. Until Tanfield joined Eden Learning Trust in May 2020. And with a strong head teacher at the helm, that's when the spark of progress finally arrived. The school is now rated as good on some measures, outstanding on others, exam performance rising above the national average. That story fills me with hope, because I know the difference a great school makes to so many children from backgrounds like mine, dissevering the tie between background and destiny. Academy schools were a part of a great age of reform, from the mid-90s to 2015. A wave of changes that lifted standards for schools and life chances for children. Driven forward by a succession of great education reformers, from David Blunkett to Michael Gove, and a generation of dedicated and determined teachers. I recognise the focus on tackling low standards in inadequate schools, which previous governments of all parties shared. I celebrate the enormous effort by parents and school staff to haul our entire system into a much better place. Strong academy trusts, top teachers, a core curriculum, these are our foundations. But sometimes I get the sense that people want to stop there, as if we can celebrate progress but stop pushing for better, as if the drive for change, the impatience with failure, that these are the proud tales of yesterday, not the agenda for tomorrow. Because I tell you, this government is very clear. The journey isn't over. The mission is never complete. It's almost 50 years since James Callaghan gave a major speech about the purpose of our education system in our country. Elements of his challenge to the established wisdom of his day are sadly all too familiar. He spoke of a system that too often left young people neither ready for work nor ready for life. The need for more young women to study science, the immense importance of numeracy for the next generation. And he spoke of his sympathy with the principle of a national curriculum, a principle that would fall to the next government to deliver. But today, it is not simply the wisdom of that speech that I have in mind. Callaghan knew the greatest truth about the determination that governments of the left should have to drive change, for it was he who told us, "You never reach the promised land. You can march towards it." So I tell you again, for me, for this government, we know that this march never ends. And yet today the barriers to opportunity have grown only higher, and the stakes for our children are just as high. Too many schools coasting, delivering an education that is just not the standard that all children deserve. There are more than 600 schools in this country that are stuck, receiving consecutive poor Ofsted judgments. More than 300,000 children go to these schools. And what happens to these children? They leave primary school with results 14 percentage points worse. They leave secondary school with results 1 grade per subject worse. Their life chances limited by the bad luck of going to a poor school. That is our inheritance, and that is not good enough. Stuck schools are the new front in the fight against low expectations. I will not accept a system that is content for some to sink even while others soar. These schools must improve, and with the right help, I know they can. Our proposals provide a response that is tailored, bespoke, effective, drawing on the insights of new Ofsted report cards. Improvement driven by new RISE teams, groups of leading experts who've been there and done it with a track record of driving up standards, turning around not just schools, but children's lives, the best of the best when it comes to school improvement. They will work with schools to get to grips quickly with the problems Ofsted spots, backed with an initial £20 million of funding, up to £100,000 per school, dwarfing the basic £6,000 that was made available for these very schools by the last government before being cancelled altogether. With structural intervention as a necessary backstop if change does not come quickly enough. We now have our first 20 expert advisors in place, and teams are beginning their work with schools up and down the country. Trust leaders right at the centre to work with us as partners in the push for better. Excellence for every child, high and rising standards for every child, success for every child, no more stuck schools drifting along. Now is the time for reform, for renewal, for modernisation, to take the whole school system forward. The way we hold schools accountable underpins it all. How we identify poor performance and drive change to lift the life chances of children. We have a strong starting place. The improvements in inspection and accountability, starting in the 90s, have been instrumental for raising standards in our schools, and Ofsted's role has been right at its heart. And to those who call for the abolition of a strong, independent, effective inspectorate, I've said it before and I will say it again, never. Never will we go back to those dark days of weak accountability, because it was children from disadvantaged backgrounds who suffered the most. And because despite those improvements, there is still so far to go. So today I am taking us into a new era on school standards. Single headline grades were the right innovation at the right time. They brought proper scrutiny to all schools, but the time for change has come. They had become high stakes for schools, but low information for parents. And for the challenges we now face, too blunt, too rough, too vague. How can it be right that so many critical decisions, parents, choices that shape whole lives, rest on a single word? It simply isn't enough, not for schools, not for families, and not for children. Our searchlight on poor performance must now become brighter to see the problems of today and tomorrow quickly and clearly. So a more rigorous system, raising the bar on expectations, on what good really looks like when it comes to the future of our children. Because when we hear that 90% of schools are rated good or outstanding by Ofsted, it's a reflection of millions of hours of hard work from teachers and leaders. But it's a statistic, I'm afraid, that just no longer paints the full picture. Good as a judgment has become too vague to serve its purpose when there are schools rated as good in both the top and bottom 1% for attainment. So just like we guard against grade inflation to make sure that results really reflect the achievements of students, we must protect standards here too. Because when almost 8 in 10 schools are graded as good, it's time we bank that progress and take good to another level. The imprecision has left too many struggling schools without the support they need to improve. If the diagnosis isn't clear, how can we be confident that the treatment will be right? And the change this government brings is one the public knows is needed. Only 13% of those asked by Ofsted think the notion that 90% of our schools are good or outstanding is truly reflective of the overall quality of schools. We need a more diagnostic approach, an approach that is restless and rigorous. Our proposals will swap single headline grades for the rich, granular insight of school report cards, raising the bar on what we expect from schools, shining a light on the areas that matter, each given their own grade, identifying excellence and rooting out performance that falls short of expectations, so that parents have clearer, better information about their local schools. And that extra information will underpin changes in how we tackle poor performance. The worst performing schools, whether local authority maintained or academies, will be moved to a strong trust. That means new leadership brought in to boost the life chances of pupils. Children only get one chance. We won't wait around while schools fail around them. And for school report cards, identify even one area for improvement for a school. Ofsted will monitor progress, looking out for warning signals, government primed to step in for children if required. The schools and trusts too, able to take swifter action from the more granular school report, because being hands-off for school after school, for year after year, simply cannot be an option when the life chances of our children are at stake. And because we know that there is so much brilliance within our schools, so much to learn from and share, a new proposed top grade of exemplary for best-in-class practice in a specific area when Ofsted judges that a school that is doing something that is simply too good to be kept inside the school gates. Because this government is never content, never complacent, never satisfied when it comes to standards in our schools. We want to spread that excellence, to promote innovation. And it's important we recognise that the best people to do that, the people who so often will be doing that, are already standing in front of us. The best trusts, the best schools, the best leaders. Our RISE teams in time, providing a universal service, will draw on them, their practice, their knowledge, their experience, helping good schools to become great, and the great schools to become even better, spreading their excellence as they go. This is a new era in accountability for schools, a new era of relentless improvement to drive up standards and open up opportunity for all. But a new spirit too, including with schools, a relationship to improve, not punish, to challenge, not to scold, based on shared aims, not shared hostility. An approach that recognises that when all's said and done, we all want the same thing, better outcomes for our children. When I first started in this job, I said I wanted to put education at the forefront of national life. So I am delighted to see the debate raging over our reforms, particularly since we introduced our Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. I have to say, I welcome it. It is a sign that under this government, once again, education is coming right back to the centre of national debate. I welcome spirited engagement. I welcome robust challenge. I welcome different views, and I will listen to them. That is how we shape the very best education system that our children deserve. And that's why the changes that we are making to accountability will draw on the wisdom of the entire sector. So I am pleased to announce a public consultation on our proposals for school accountability reform. Alongside that, Ofsted are consulting on their proposals for report cards and inspection structures. We want to hear the views of teachers and parents, schools and trusts, all those who care about our children's futures. All parents worry about their children, and that's because they want so much for them. There were times when I was small, when my mum worried about me. People would tell her that I had speech issues because I talked so little. Well, I'm talking now. And to the young people, the families who feel that they don't have a voice, don't have a future, I say this. Under this government, this Labour government, no longer will where you're from decide what you go on to do. Opportunity for every child, in every school, in every part of our country. Everything I do as Secretary of State, I do for all children. The ones who grew up on streets like mine, who don't not yet have a great school to go to, who are weighed down by their background. I am asking more of schools, of trusts, of parents, of Ofsted, of myself and of this government, and I make no apologies for that. We need change to turn the drift and delay of today into the restless progress of tomorrow, because I believe that background shouldn't be destiny. I believe in the power of education to take us to a brighter future, and I believe that each and every child in our country deserves nothing less. Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm going to take some questions from broadcast media, starting with Branwen Jeffries.
What's one thing will parents be able to judge you by at the end of this? Are you saying, how will parents be able to hold you to account for what you're promising? Are you saying that you will get rid of failing schools under this government in this parliament?
Well, parents will hold us to account at the ballot box whenever the next election comes. And my message to parents is I want them to see a new and relentless focus on the very best quality education in all of our schools. There have been too many schools that for too long have not been delivering what all of our children deserve. What we are bringing is modernisation, reform, and a real focus on schools where we simply haven't had the progress that is required. What parents will see from the new set of arrangements, from the report cards, and from what I'm setting out today is much more information about what's working well within their child's school and where there is further to go in driving improvement. At the moment, as a parent, if you were to read an Ofsted report, you could be left almost entirely in the dark as to what's working well within your child's school or what needs to change. What we are bringing to the system is a new rigour, a new strength, but also more information so that all of us can pull together and push forward, building on the progress that we have, but not accepting that we've reached the stage we need to get to. I've got Carl Dinnan from ITV.
Thank you, Secretary of State. The Ofsted report card proposals have taken a bit of a hammering from the unions today. Isn't it true that there's actually no such thing as a system that provides enough clarity to be useful to parents whilst having enough complexity to be acceptable to the unions?
But I think the system should and can do both. I think parents are more than able to process more information than is the case currently provided. I think it's frankly deeply insulting to suggest that somehow parents either don't want or can't understand a wider range of areas that need further improvement or where there is real strength within the school system. What this will also allow us to do is to not just focus on areas where schools need to improve and where we will put extra support behind that, but alongside that, recognising where there is fantastic work within the system, where schools are doing brilliant, excellent work, but where that should be spread right across the whole school system. The system that we inherited was one that was at one level high stakes, but low information, and we're turning a corner on that. I have Tamara Cohen from Sky.
Thank you, Tamara Cohen, Sky News. The Ofsted report card has been described by the Head Teachers Union as bewildering, by the sister of Ruth Perry as a dangerous rehash of the current system, and even by Ofsted whistleblowers as botched. Have you been surprised by their reaction, and why do you think they're giving it the red card?
I'd just like to start by recognising the tragedy of Ruth Perry's death, and I think the impetus for change that her sister, Professor Julia Waters, has brought to the system. I've spoken with Julia about the need to reform Ofsted, yes, in terms of the report card system, but also the wider reform that is required. And I know that Martin Oliver, the Chief Inspector, has started that work, but there is more that needs to happen. On the report cards in particular, I think parents are more than able to understand and to take on board greater information about what's happening within their children's school, both in terms of strengths and areas of weakness and where there is further work required on improvement. So I just fundamentally reject this idea that somehow providing more information, shining a light on areas where there is a need for improvement, but also where there is excellence, is somehow not something that parents want when all the evidence is clear that they do, but also will provide an impetus and a drive to take forward more action within schools where we haven't seen the progress that we've needed in recent years. I now have Aggie from LBC.
Aggie Chambray, LBC. Just on those comments from Julia Waters, she also said, what has been proposed here confirms my fears that Ofsted are incapable of reforming themselves and should never actually have been allowed to reform themselves. Do you have a response to that? And if I may, you've laid out your vision here today. What would you deem as success at the end of this Parliament?
I do pay tribute to Professor Julia Waters for the work that she has taken up on behalf of Ruth and the whole family following the tragedy of Ruth's death. Of course, there is an important need to strike a balance to make sure that the well-being of staff, of teachers, is an important part of this. We make that very clear in our accountability reform document that we set out today. But I do think we can deliver a better system that provides a stronger inspectorate, but a clearer focus on what needs to change. But of course, this is only one part of the reform that's needed. Sir Martin is taking forward wider reform that is necessary and long overdue. The report cards are an important element of this, but not the only area where change is required in terms of Ofsted's work. In terms of what success looks like, it's about tackling those schools that for too long have been drifting along. The last government had no plan to deal with those schools where year after year, Ofsted would come in, make a judgment, and progress didn't happen. We will have a real focus through our RISE teams, expert advisors working with those schools to drive up standards, and we will hold ourselves to a tough set of measures in terms of school performance, in seeking to make sure there is a better system for all children, including support for children with SEND who have been forgotten for far too long, and tackling those wide disadvantage gaps that have endured for too long and are frankly a national scandal. GB News.
Thank you, Adam Cherry, GB News. School absences, still a huge problem, way above pre-pandemic levels. Your government saying you're going to usher in a new era of school attendance, but so far, 6 months in, do you feel you've failed on that? How long will it take to turn this trend around?
I'm deeply concerned about the levels of school absence that we're seeing, especially persistent absence. 1 in 5 children regularly not in school. We know that damages not just their life chances, but also their long-term options, their earnings potential, whole careers. But also we know it has a big and damaging effect on the whole school community too. So teachers having to catch up, cover ground because children haven't been there. That's not something that we as government can tackle alone, although there's a lot that we're doing. It's about that partnership between government, schools and families. And after the pandemic, that increasing fracturing that we've seen, that's why it's been so important that we've reset that relationship between government and schools and with the workforce too. But in terms of what we're doing at the moment, we're investing more in mentoring and attendance support, working with schools that are not delivering what they should to drive up attendance rates. We've already got that work underway. Because what we see are often big differences between the best performing trusts and those that are not doing all that they might be able to do. So that work's underway to challenge, but also to support. But no, we can't expect our children to achieve at school if they aren't there, and attendance is a big priority for this government. And I think that is it from broadcast colleagues, and I'll pass over to you, Andy.
Right, we'll just rearrange the stage. 1 minute, bear with us, and we'll sit down there, Bridget.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.